So we get to finally talk about another Nintendo console, which in my opinion is one of the craziest consoles Nintendo's ever made. And I'm not even just saying that. I truly do think that the Nintendo DSi is one of the most impactful and one of the most important Nintendo consoles Nintendo has ever made. And that's not even counting like a portable console, whatever. I think this is top 5 most important, consoles Nintendo's ever made, period. And funny enough, I didn't actually own a DSi, when I was younger. I owned a DS Lite and I love that console. And I looked at the Nintendo DSi and I really didn't think it was that big of an upgrade. But then I eventually got to purchase it and I went through with it. But before that, I was able to watch reviews and everything. And I was kind of blown away about the capability behind a Nintendo DSi. And I was so glad I didn't really see like DSi's that much when I was growing up when I owned a DS Lite, because I would have been so jealous of that console. Now here's the funny thing, I think a Nintendo DSi is still a pretty good purchase in 2022. If you want to buy this console and you want to go ahead and just like play games with it and everything, this thing has a massive library of games. The biggest disadvantage I remember of the DSi, at least when I was kind of started researching it and when I eventually bought it many, many years ago, the biggest problem was this thing did lack that Game Boy Advance slot, and I do want to get that out of the way, but that is really the biggest complaint that I can see. And for myself, you can get a DSi and DSi nowadays for really, really cheap, so it doesn't really even make too much sense to complain about it. You can buy DS Lites for like $20 nowadays, and a DSi probably for around the same price tag if you're lucky. I've personally bought my Nintendo DSi from Japan, and it got shipped here, and those consoles are very, very cheap there too. So starting with the outside, this whole entire device pretty much resembles exactly what the DS Lite looked like. It was in the same type of, build quality and everything. The biggest thing with the DSi though was that it did have the camera setup. So it had a back camera and a front-facing camera as well, and that is pretty crazy. Now the cameras really aren't that great anymore, and I probably wouldn't recommend using them, but it's pretty impressive when you remember this thing came out in 2008, and if you remember, the original iPhone came out in 2007 or something, and this specific DSi, if you think about it, this console actually had a dual camera setup before the iPhones had it, and a lot of Androids as well, so that was pretty crazy to keep in mind. Now, when you flip it open, now it did have like this matte texture on the outside, which I actually kind of liked. It felt pretty nice. Again, no Game Boy Advance slot, but you had the DS, cartridge up top. You had the power buttons on this thing as well. Internally, you had the volume buttons, but you also had an SD card slot on this console as well. Now with the DS Lite, this did not have that capability, but this console actually had it. And that's what's so crazy to me. They eventually brought an SD card slot on a portable console, and you may be wondering, wait, why did they even do that? Well, it's because you had the capability of actually, utilizing and downloading online games. So you can go to the Nintendo DSi shop, the DSiWare shop, and you can actually download games and everything for this specific console. And that's what's so crazy to me at that time. You would never believe that, at that time, that you would be able to do it. Sony was able to do it on their PlayStation P, but weirdly enough, with the DS Lite, I never really thought about it. At that time, we were able to do DS Download Play, so you could share some games to one another, but it was temporary, or you can make your way over to like a Walmart and download a game via their game place there. It was really weird, but this one actually had the capability of doing that via software, and I can't believe Nintendo did that. Now flipping it open, you can see the two screens that we had before. Very cool. You had that, camera right in the middle too. And it did actually look visibly better with the LED lights, with the power button right there too. And I did actually think this looked much better. Now the D-pad was also improved, so that also made it a little bit of a better console there. But my favorite thing about this console was actually turning it on. When you turned it on and you went through the actual software, this was a full-on UI that I've never seen and even thought of before when I actually, saw this console a couple times, but then I bought it. I never thought about it, but the DS Lite was a very bare bones architecture. It didn't really have too much going for it besides, actually playing the games. With the DSi, this actually brought a full ecosystem. So even if you didn't even buy any games yet, not only could you buy games and download games from their, shop online, but you could actually go ahead and utilize some offline games that were free and offline apps as well. So you didn't have to go and switch out your game cartridges every 10 seconds or whatever. You could go ahead and download an app, download a game, and still have your DSi games right on your specific, console right there. As long as you had enough space on your SD card, you had that capability, which was so cool. Now, let alone that, you can easily tell that the software is still actually pretty prevalent in this day and age. In my opinion, the DSi software looks almost exactly like, kind of like the Wii software a little bit, but also kind of looks like the Wii U software, but it also looks kind of like the Switch software as well. I mean, it's pretty basic layout, and you can say that this thing looks like a lot of things, but when you think about the age of this thing back in 2008, I mean, it's a pretty old console now, 14 years almost, and the fact that this thing's software is still actually pretty relevant is pretty insane to me. Now, it's not getting any more software updates, it's not going to randomly get an update now, but it's actually pretty impressive, like I mentioned, what Nintendo was able to do at that point for a portable console. And I do think Sony with their PSP really pushed Nintendo into actually making it that much better of a console. So I think the DSi right there was really awesome. But to add to that, if you ever wanted to download games or download apps, like I mentioned, you can go ahead and do that with this specific console. But this console also had software updates as well, which was so crazy. So you can actually go and get an update for this thing if you needed to. Now, I don't think a lot of people were updating their console too often, but sometimes there would be a new software out, and you can go to your settings and you can go and update your console too. So again, that was another really cool thing with this specific console. Now, this thing still had the basic things within it, like, the Picto Chat and some other things within, the console itself, but I was a big fan of just the fact that you can actually download apps on this thing in the first place. Now, the gaming library of this console is pretty vast. The unfortunate thing is it doesn't have, the Game Boy Advance cartridge slot anymore, but it still has a pretty good library of Nintendo DS games. So if you're somebody who wants to go and, purchase some DS games, and you can go pick up a DSi. So if you're somebody who has a bunch of DS games, or somewhere you can get DS games for cheap, like eBay or somewhere, dude, then this is a perfect console for you. For some people, I would probably recommend getting a DSi XL, but I'll save that for that other video. But this is still a very good console because of the amount of games that you can get for this thing. I know a lot of people who wanted to go and pick up a console and maybe have it as a collector's item too, and this is a pretty decent option as well. I don't really see, unless you get like a boxed version or unopened Nintendo DSi, then maybe you can get some more money for it, but the DSis that I have haven't really gone up in value too much. My Game Boy Advance Micro and my PSP Go have gone up in value quite a bit, but my DSi is still around the same, probably because they sold, a lot of them or something, but there's so many games out for this console as well, and also there's quite a bit of a modding, community behind this thing too. I don't know if I was able to mod my DSi or DSi XL, quite potentially I was able to do for my DSi XL. I did do my 3DS XL, which was really fun, and this console, and my standard 3DS as well, but this console probably has that capability, and it's another reason why you could probably pick up this thing. You can tinker around with it, see what type of capability it has, and then pretty much move on from there. So overall, I think the Nintendo DSi, more so than just it being worth it in this day and age, because it's still worth it, you can still play games on everything. The fact of the matter that we went from a DS Lite with pretty much basic features, it didn't really bring anything crazy, to a DSi with a fully redesigned software and just so much capability like that, it really changed my perspective on Nintendo. It really showcased to me, how great of a console the DSi was. At first, I thought it was like a pretty small upgrade, it didn't bring too much, but after looking around it and actually remembering how my DS Lite was, dude, the DSi and DSi XL were pretty big upgrades, and the fact that Nintendo was able to do this at 2008, and the fact that the software is still kind of, being used nowadays with how the Switch looks and everything, I'm actually really happy with how Nintendo went about with the Nintendo DSi, and for sure I would recommend picking it up without a doubt. So that pretty much covers it up. If you guys have any other questions or anything like that, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.